Hi, everyone, and welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show on the Storehouse Media Group Podcast. We're the host, Sherrie of Storehouse Media. Sherrie, you continue to bring back your crew from Vegas. You're
I
supposed to
know,
forget things when you go leave Vegas. You're not supposed to remember them. Who is
I,
our amazing guest today?
I know. I'm the kind I'm gonna have to blab about Vegas. Okay, I don't follow the rules when it comes to Vegas. But anyway, Crime Con, awesome event. And at Crime Con, I met Troy Hillman. And Troy Hillman, he's retired from Phoenix PD. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. He worked cold cases, but he's also an author. So welcome, Troy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, yeah. So, when I met Troy, he had this book and he also, he talked about his time. Now, when he was in Phoenix, he was a homicide sergeant, homicide investigator on the cold cases. But Troy, before Phoenix PD, you had another life and you were a CPA. And somehow you went, and the CPA is a big deal. I mean, you have to study, you have to be, I mean, really super smart. And you went on and you have, you're certified public accountant, and you have an MBA in finance, a master's degree in educational leadership. I mean, I knew like this guy's like a business professional that, you kind of presented yourself. So tell us about that journey of going from that CPA to code cases.
Yeah, I always joke that I put down a briefcase and calculator and picked up a gun and badge. But it was not an easy journey because I think everybody thought I was crazy, including my parents, my family. I'd done really well on the CPA exam. I was kind of labeled early on as partner material, and I was working for one of the big powerhouses in Chicago. And to walk into that partner, the managing partner's office, and tell him, "Hey, I'm going to go become a police officer and hopefully a detective in Phoenix," and he was just like, he literally said, "Oh, we've never had anybody leave to become a police officer." And I said, "Well, I guess I'll be your first." So that's that.
Wow. I'm shocked. What made you want to do that? But you seem like you wanted
Well,
to really advance in law enforcement. So you weren't looking just to be a police officer. You wanted to move up the ranks completely, which again, that career choice can be huge. Some people in law enforcement have gone to the highest level in law enforcement at one point in time. There's a huge growth. So that's kind of by looking at CPA saying no one has ever done that. Maybe it's just basically their DNA. Most CPAs don't have the DNA you have, right?
yeah, I mean, most of them put in all that work and basically have that, like you said, DNA, and they're completely happy with either working in tax or audit or, and they're good people. I always tell people, hey, just because I walked away and kind of, in essence, turned my back, that doesn't mean that it's a great profession. It is for a lot of people. It just wasn't for me. I was bored. I was 24 years old, and I always joke I'd seen way too many Dirty Harry Callahan movies with Clint Eastwood and Charles Bronson with my father. And I think I had that kind of embedded, and I wanted to do something more and kind of look at clues and become ultimately a detective. And possibly, yeah, maybe climb the ranks, but ultimately, detective was my goal.
So you ended up, I mean, you were, because of your finance background, when you got to the police department, you went into different divisions that involved money, right? Because of your background. But somehow you kind of ended and landed in the cold case division. How did that happen?
Yeah, I worked in financial crimes, and it was interesting. It was a great career. There's a lot of people doing bad stuff with Arizona is one of the biggest identity thefts right next to California. Again, there was a need for it, and it was neat. But ended up promoting to sergeant, sent back out on the streets, get really kind of developed, and ended up getting placed as an admin sergeant for a commander in the Violent Crimes Bureau. And as part of that assignment, I got to know the homicide lieutenant really well, and he got visibly excited by Excel spreadsheets. So he and I, we hit it off as kind of spreadsheet jockeys and that kind of thing. So he said, "Hey, we've got a major problem in cold case. I'd like you to come fix it." And I was like, What do you mean fix it?" And he's like, "Well, just I'll let you know." And so it was very problematic when we got there, and we ended up kind of fixing it.
Wow. Sherrie, it's just interesting how I already see how he would be perfect with being able to dot every I and cross every T to be able to go and figure out a cold case. It kind of, as I said, DNA, he did have a specific DNA for this. And he probably likes challenges. And would you agree, Troy? You liked challenges, and that's what being a police officer or being a higher level law enforcement is, the challenges to solve these cases, which lots of people point to. And you see all these detective stories, right, Troy, where they're trying to discover a murder and how popular they're on TV and stuff like that. Is that the kind of thing is you always are trying to figure out a puzzle?
Yeah, it was like I describe it as finding the hidden, object in the picture. I played that as a kid, and you're trying to find that. And to me, that's what you're doing as a detective, and especially a cold case detective. Case has already been worked a couple times, and maybe even more so. And you're looking at it saying, "Hey, what can I do? How can I apply new technology? What haven't we done? Who haven't we looked at?" That kind of thing. So it is a definite riddle, and the odds are stacked against you.
Yeah, and I do think of puzzles because numbers can be puzzles, and for me, especially if I'm trying to reconcile my bank statement, it can be a puzzle. So you got to find those pieces and get them in there and make them fit, and kind of like squishing them where they don't fit doesn't work. And again, I guess I've never looked at it quite that way. With cold cases, they have been worked a few times, so it's like your fresh eyes now, and you got to go in there like, okay, is there something that is new or got overlooked or whatever? And like you said, it's fine. I love those games too, like going in the pictures and trying to find the hidden. I've loved them. And so I guess that's law enforcement in the making. But anyway, you had to do that, and you were talking about that you guys had come across some kind of a technology that you were using to help solve some of your cases. And that I think that technology was used by them to solve the Golden State Killer case as well.
Yeah, so the odds were kind of stacked against us too. We had I was told when we first walked in the door, we think we have 2,500 cold cases, and I kind of was shaking my head. And as a CPA, I was like, how do we not know? And that's kind of like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like your inventory. It's like, how do we not know how many people we don't have suspects? They don't match up. So that drove me nuts. And I spent the greater part of 10 years trying to figure out that equation. But we did have around 2,500. So with all that, and on this particular case, we did use in 2014. I'm very proud of Phoenix PD. We were kind of pioneers with genetic genealogy. And I believe it was one of my detectives that actually kind of tipped the California authorities off and, hey, you may want to look into this in 2018 when they used it on a Golden State Killer. And again, it doesn't really matter. He was a really bad dude. Both guys were bad dudes. But really, I'm always a big believer in when praise is due, it would go to Phoenix Police Department for using it on a major case.
So talked about, and we don't want to give away the book. So Troy, this is one of the tips. You want to come in and show your expertise in every interview. Never give away the book. This is tip from a marketer that knows this. I am intrigued. Just Troy, take us through a process when you're looking at a cold case. What does your brain do compared to the other members of your team when you see a case that's unsolved? What are your first steps that you would do?
Well, the first thing you do is we kind of came up with a template to flush out what are we looking at and kind of synthesize a case. Some of these homicide reports are massive, and especially the case with the book, they were thousands of pages. So just kind of synthesize that into a cliff notes of a sorts, where you put everything together: who, what, where, when, how, why. and you can look at it and say, okay, here's the evidence, here's what's been done, here's the people we've looked at. What did we miss? Is kind of that. What's the hidden object? Who did we maybe gloss by and didn't get their DNA? And that was kind of massive. So that's what it was, a very methodical approach, and even revisiting the crime scene years later.
Wow. So Sherrie, Sherrie also was a police officer. So Sherrie, did you ever try to solve a cold case?
No, no, not back in the day when I was doing it, but I do find them, fascinating. And I think when it comes to cold cases, like the list just goes endless.
They wouldn't let you when you were in the NYPD to do something like
No,
that?
no,
What, do
I
they
never
have a certain
tried
rules?
actually.
Huh?
I never tried. I never tried to get to that.
So what was your role as a police officer when you were in NYPD?
Mine,
Yeah.
I was patrol. I did other stuff and plain clothes, decoy. I When I was pregnant, I went and I became a liaison between the police department and the DA's office. I had to really learn my law really well on that.
Interesting. So you can't, so this is Troy. You can't, if I just say, okay, I'm a police officer now, Troy, you can't just say, I'm going to go like, you see in these TV shows, I'm going to go to the cold case list. Unless you're in homicide, you can't even get involved and go in those back rooms, can you?
No, but we also had a kind of a motto of something is better than nothing. When we're up against 2,500 cold cases and there's only 5 detectives and a sergeant, I mean, you need all the help you can get and fresh set of eyes. So we had volunteers, interns, pretty much all hands all hands on deck kind of approach. But yeah, as far as really ciphering out a cold case, you kind of need a little bit of experience.
What do you think of AI now? Are they putting that into a lot of ways to be able to solve cold cases faster and especially with now this agency loop where an agent can loop around? I know you're out of it, but you still probably are looking at this, where you can pretty much have an agent research things, an AI agent 24/7, 7 days a week, and go and hunt all those. If I was a police department right now, I'd say I can solve 2,000 cold cases right now by literally building out agents, upload all the files. You probably need to have a large language model that's private, create that large language model that's private, and then just have it just go in there and go through everything a cold case has throughout beginning, end, and figure out solving them. I think police departments need to do that, Troy. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. AI is a phenomenal tool. It's powerful. And just, I was just testifying actually in a murder trial a couple of weeks ago, and I talked to a detective that's still on the department, and he said they're starting to use AI. And so I was so relieved to hear that because typically the average police department is about 10 to 20 years behind the curve as far as using technology. That's what I found. And it's neat that they're embracing it, and it's going to
Well, you
save a
Troy,
massive.
you got to let me know if they're using loops because everyone still think it's prompting. I literally have my first agents doing loops for me. They literally are researching every one of my clients every day to set up a call. So anytime I put in the calendar, it goes through all my research, all my stuff in Google, all my stuff in my Gmail, everything. So I'm prepared before a call. And then I have another one doing research. I'm about to build out research agents for every one of them with Claude that are going to be on a loop. I think if you're looking at time as the biggest thing, I could solve thousands of cold cases. And I'm not with the computer programmers. Someone listening needs to go to every police department and say, and become the cold case AI expert that says, I'll bring AI in and we could search these cases that have been from 20 years ago, as long as most of the data is on computers. A lot of it's not been inputted in the computers yet, has it?
Yeah, no, and they've switched the systems a couple times, so sometimes that stuff is backlogged and getting it uploaded in the new system. So yeah, you're absolutely spot on.
I mean, for anything, everything needs to get to that point. That's where the power of AI comes into place. But you always need a human in the loop to do that. I just bringing that up because I'm just trying to come up with solving something. If you're telling me most police departments have that many cold cases, and only X amount of detectives that could ever solve them. I think we have the solution. There you go, Troy. Become an AI consultant in that. Go in and solve all these cold cases, and literally you'll save so many lives, or have so many families happy that they found who was the one that did it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that, but again, it's kind of an invite only business. So certainly, I would love to help.
Well,
And good.
I was going to ask you your book, Chasing Down the Zombie Hunter. Tell us about that book and what caused you to write it.
So again, keeping it high level with what Neil said, I basically I take the reader on a ride along. You're basically part of a cold case squad, and you go step by step as we tackle these two massive cases from the early 90s.
Wow.
These cases reeked of a serial killer. It was actually something that I had read a part of a media records request, and I started reading them, and I was like, wow, this is high level. This is over the top, the level of brutality that this individual, something Stephen King maybe would put, in a book or in Hollywood because it was just so graphic and gory. And then, we wanted to give these girls and their families answers. And I think a lot of the people said, oh, he's dead. He's been in the system forever. But we refused to give up. We came together as a team. We consulted with experts and we plowed our way through it. It took us 3.5 years and we eventually caught up with them.
So if you commit a crime, at one point you're going to get caught, Troy. That's pretty much what you're going to say, right?
I would love to say that every time, but yeah, if there's groups like us, I would say yes.
I mean, I watch these shows, right? These television shows really give me a good understanding, even that maybe you'll disagree, but to that point, that really give me a good understanding of what's happening and why things happen the way they happen, right? Um, that it's easy to solve a cold case, but that's not the case at all. How can I think that we just really it's a shame, right? If a family lost a loved one because of a murder and we've never figured it out, it's a shame. And you're hoping this book brings light that we need to get lots of people to go and investigate on their own things and really things that happen how many years. So if you murdered somebody 40 years later, you still could be convicted. Is there a timeline where you can't be convicted of a murder?
Oh, I think it's state dependent, but most states there's no statute of limitations on murder, sexual assaults, that kind of thing. So missing persons. So we've got to
Wow.
keep working on those cases. We can't just forget. I think it's easy for leaders just kind of brush them aside and say, oh, well, we're working on it, but they're really not. Or maybe they bring in a retired detective once a month to look to kind of shuffle through the pages. But to me, that's why I trademarked my slogan, "Cold Cases Matter," because it does. I mean, not only you've got families waiting for justice, but you also have a suspect that's still out there, and he's already killed once.
Wow. I think sure we have to solve this. So there you go. That's why you have this podcast again. I guess this is considered criminally good as well, right? Or we
Yeah.
making this the same one? Okay. So that's why I
Yeah.
have to keep announcing that. And you got to keep using that as the slogan. But that's why we're doing these podcasts for crime to stop this crime from happening. And especially something like this, a murder. And Sherrie, were you ever? So I never asked to get the ask these police officer question. Sherrie, did you ever have to try to solve a murder?
No, I was not in homicide.
Did you ever
I
see a dead body?
Oh yeah, plenty of those. I got to sit with them too for overnights and stuff. So yeah, as you watch it, search them. Yeah.
But none of them were murders.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
they
you
were.
didn't have to solve it, but you at least covered a murder. Oh my goodness.
Hmm.
So Troy, what's your hope with this book? Because I find it fascinating, and I'm a big fan of the Idea channel, ID channel, uh, and really am into that kind of stuff. It's intriguing and try to figure out who done it, or those crime things that they have on NBC. They just are so interesting, and you just try to keep figuring out who, why, and all that stuff. What is the hope with this book?
The hope is to basically twofold: get people interested in talking about cold cases and how many asking jurisdictions, how many do we really have where you live? Because I think a lot of people don't know that there's this cold case problem in the United States. It's massive. The amount, especially women, young women, and they and some minority groups are heavily targeted. Nobody really wants to talk about it, which is disturbing. But also to brand myself as a cold case expert so that I can go in and help other agencies kind of set up a cold case squad, how we reviewed the cases, what we did right, what we did wrong, that kind of thing.
I want you to bring me in as your if you do that and it ends up happening, I want you to bring me in as your AI expert so I can consult these police departments. I would love
Definitely.
to be part of it. And it doesn't matter if it's a volunteer thing. It's not about the money. I want to get people to understand the power of where AI really helps. And I think cold cases could be huge because imagine having to read how many documents and scan so many photos and all these different things that your head's spinning to make it happen. But I love that. That's a great. So basically, you're no longer practicing as a police officer anymore. Is that correct, Troy?
I retired. I miss a lot of the clowns, but not the circus. So that's how I always tell people.
And so, how you're spending your retirement is writing and consulting. Are you doing consulting too, right now?
I am. I am. I try. I'm not doing it on a case by case level because I don't have the bandwidth. But I'm also a kind of help parents of murdered children, which is a great group of people, grieving. And I'm also on the Silent Witness Board here locally in Arizona. So just trying to give back and kind of help. And also, I'm a full-time dad. So
Oh, great. Okay, so you stay busy still in that involvement. So your hope with the consulting firm is just basically to be the expert or be considered a consultant, the expert when cold cases come up that are early in the stage, right? A year in versus 30 years, right? You want to be more on the cusp of a newer cold case, right?
I mean, yeah, that it always helps, but certainly, some of the ones the murder trial I was on was 1984. We cracked that one with genealogy. So it really doesn't. If you've got the right, uh, I guess, if you've got the right evidence and tools, and the right people, I think you can solve a lot of these. It doesn't matter how much time has gone by.
Totally. Sherrie, I mean, we're learning about Sherrie as a police officer as well. What do you think's most fascinating about Troy?
Well, I love the fact I love his background, and I think it came in so handy in what you did. I mean, that's your CPAs are methodical and they dot their I's and they cross their T's. And wow, that's such a skill to have when you're working on these cold cases. And so I just think that's fascinating. And he became an author. A lot of people talk about wanting to write a book, but Troy did it. So congrats to you on that, getting that done. And yeah, I just, you talk to people who work these cases and they're always interesting, always. And that's why ID is such a big deal, is people love hearing all these cases. And I don't know why, but we do. We do. So, share them is, it's a big deal. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Troy, if they want to find out how to get a hold of you, talk about your book, where they get your book, what would you say?
So I have an author website, troyhillmancoldcase.com. It has pretty much everything you need. It has links to get the book, links to kind of some of the cases we looked at, pretty much everything, anything and everything on that website. I was excited that, not to denigrate self-publishing at all, but I kind of wanted to swing for the fences and go for a traditional publishing so I can get this out on a wider group. And I was lucky that Simon Schuster or Pegasus Crime picked it up. So Simon Schuster's would be the website to go to for the book.
So did you have to get a literary agent to do this? Because it's always good education to talk about these things.
I did, and the first-time author pursuit of a book deal was nauseating. I felt like it was dating, trying to get first of all, an agent, and then the time it took about 3 or 4 years to get a publishing deal off the ground. So yeah,
How long did it
it's
take you to
not.
land a literary agent? Because that's the most important thing. How long did that
It
take
took
you?
me about 6 months to land the agent, and then about a year and a half to land the book. And then, then publishing it was another year or so. So it was an arduous process for sure.
Wow.
But it's worth it when you get it done and you see it out there and you see your name on the cover of that book.
Yeah, it was neat to walk into Barnes and Noble. I took my daughters and my wife, and like I got to go to the local Barnes and Noble and see if it's there. And it was just such a great feeling just to see it there. And again, I'm hoping that it turns into attention on cold cases, and they continue to the focal point of cold cases matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Best place we can go, Troy, real quickly, one more time.
TroyHillmanColdCase.com.
Okay.
And they can find your book there or Amazon, because I've seen it on Amazon. Yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Troy.
I'm sorry. It's on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Simon and Schuster. It's pretty much every major literary retailer.
Okay. All right. Well, fantastic. Appreciate it, guys. And you go to storehousemediagroup.com for all things publishing, podcasting, and media. Appreciate it. That was the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show on the Storehouse Media Group podcast, guys. Take care.